Hi, Shirley. So good to see you. Today, I'm Nicki Corinne White, and I am the director for Live Boldly Ministries podcast. And this podcast really has a lot to do with people doing, encouraging others in their walk of faith and sharing the gospel with them and going out of your comfort zone. And today we have the privilege of talking with Shirley Luckadoo. And I recently met Shirley at a conference, and she's just delightful. And I was so excited to have her on this podcast today. Shirley's been the director of Celebrate Recovery for like 17 years or so at their church. And she also is the co-founder of Capstone Ministry Recovery Center. She's a passion for helping others, and through their addictions and hurts and compulsive behaviors, through Christ and being able to overcome those things. And so, Shirley, this morning, let's talk and ask you a little bit about, can you tell us just a little bit about your background?
All right. I was born into I guess, a family where my father worked and my mama was a stay-at-home mom. He had his own business as a service station on the garage. And I grew up, they were not churchgoers, so I did not grow up in church, but they let me go to church functions. And at the early age of 9, I met Jesus. Fast forward a number of years, though, I really didn't understand Jesus and the relationship. You can get a lot of head knowledge about Jesus, but I never really got the relationship, the heart. So when my husband and I married, we did what many young couples do. We pursued the American dream. We went to college. We were very successful. Both of us were. We were in church, but we also allowed ourselves to get sucked into the world's let's have everything, let's have all the good stuff. And we also got along with that an addiction to alcohol. And it was hidden to most people. I mean, we did great. But that was where my passion for recovery ministry was born. When the Lord drug me out of that pit and put my feet on solid ground, he also put a new purpose in my heart, and that was to minister to people who were struggling with what we call hurts, addictions, and compulsive behaviors. And that's how I got involved in Celebrate Recovery. I retired from what I was doing. I was a vice president at a community college. I had a great life, but God called me to do something else. And so I retired and I went to work in ministry.
That's awesome. And sometimes it is so easy. I have 4 kids and now multiple grandbabies, and it's just like there's so much to do, and we get caught and we keep going, and pretty soon a year's gone, 2 years is gone, and
right.
And I was involved heavily in church ministries, taught Awana for 30 years, ladies Bible studies, whatever, but I didn't become full-time in ministry until in my 50s and start writing books and start Live Boldly Ministries. And it's like, people are like, well, why are you starting so late at this? But, I don't think God has any timeline on how we can serve him.
Well, I was well up in my 50s before I ever began to think about
this. That's great. And so how did you get involved with a recovery type of ministry? Did you, because of your past, like feel burdened for it, or tell us about how that all got started?
All right. As I said, I retired from my job and I went to work. I went to the seminary and I was studying. I had a heart for this. I was at a retreat and the Lord just burdened me to find a way to minister to people. And I thought that was through support group ministry. So I retired, went to the seminary, even pastored a little church for a couple of years. And then when I came home, I literally sat down on my couch and I said, Lord, I don't know why you have sent me on this path. You're going to have to send somebody to my door to tell me what in the world you want me to do. I really said, I'm too old and I'm too female to be of much use in the traditional church.
Old and female?
Yeah, old and female. Well, I
Old
don't
and
know.
female.
Yeah, yeah. In the Baptist church, women are not quite as open to ministry roles. But anyway, that was my words. And 2 days later, a former pastor of mine who knew something of my husband's and my background came to our door. He literally came to the door and he came in and he said, I'd love to invite you back to our church and I'd like for you to help start a ministry called Celebrate Recovery. I never even heard of Celebrate Recovery. Been to AA. At AA, I'd even told God, I said, this needs to be in the church. Well, it's a 12-step program in the church.
Friends who teach and celebrate recovery also, like that
Uh-huh.
that do that at their church. It's a wonderful, I think it's a wonderful thing. And you're right. Some things the church doesn't like have within the body to help. Our
Right,
church is just recently starting a different type of program, and it's years overdue. Like
right,
we really need to get that kind of thing, healing
right.
within the body. So tell us, so the new book that you have out, tell us about the new book.
Right.
And after you tell us about it, why don't you share? Yes, there you go. Show that again.
There
Yes.
it is.
And then share one of the stories in there that had a really big impact, testimonies in there that really had a big impact on you.
Right. It's called True Stories of People in Recovery, Finding Healing from Life's Hurts, Addictions, and Compulsive Behaviors. It's 13 stories, 13 people. Mine is the last story in the book. But it evolved from people giving their testimonies in Celebrate Recovery. And the Lord seemed to tell me, you need to go start collecting these. So it did. It took me years to really sit down and start doing it. But once I began, I just loved it. All the people in there are real live people who have all kinds of hurts. Celebrate Recovery is not just about addiction. There's a lot of people who come for that, but it's for people with hurts, habits, hang-ups, compulsive behaviors. And so every story in there is a story. In the words of the person, I took their stories and edited it, and I'm the editor. I didn't write anything but my one story.
Mhm.
So every person in there has come out of some kind of traumatic event. You will ask them one of them. Well, the very first one is a lady named Karen. And Karen was not a believer till she was in her early 40s. She lived the drug life, was married to a drug dealer, had a son, but she was, as she says, I was not raising him in the church. I was not a believer. She had gone to church as a child, but didn't really ever give her life to Christ until she was arrested. And it's all about a raid from the FBI came in, or anyway, she ended up in prison, and on the floor of a prison cell, she finally gave her life to Christ. She spent 10 and a half years in prison. She became what she called God's inside agent. She worked on behalf of Christ, and I met her through Celebrate Recovery. We were taking Celebrate Recovery to the prison where she was. And that's how I came to meet her. Beautiful woman. Today, she is in varying kinds of ministry herself. She tells her story. I won't go into all the story, but even after she got out of prison, she had a very, very difficult, traumatic thing happen to her. And all she could do was to forgive the perpetrator. So it's a beautiful story of how God reaches down and pulls us out of wherever we are, and He gives us a new purpose in life. And that's Karen.
And that's just the answer to it.
Yeah,
And with me, it's like scripture just speaks to you when you're hurting, right?
right.
And it makes you feel like you're not overwhelmed, that he's listening, and it comforts your heart. But if you're
Right.
not a believer, you don't have that comfort.
Yeah.
And so well, that's an amazing book. I do not have it yet, but I would
Well,
like to
I
get
need
that
to
book.
mail you one. If you will email me your address, I'll certainly see that you get one.
Well, and I can email you. I mean, I can send back one of my books to you. That,
Oh,
that would
that
be
would be a
fun.
good trade, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be a good trade. Um, but yeah, I think that God can just definitely heal, and Celebrate Recovery is such a great ministry. So you have also started a new ministry,
Mhm.
and why don't you share what the name of that is and about that ministry?
Well, the new ministry that we've gotten it in place. It is not a reality yet. The proceeds from this book and wherever else we can find donations, we want to start a men's recovery house. Um, and we already have a female house in town. We've been doing that for 10 years. This would be open to males who need a recovery program. It's called King's Haven Ministries. And as I said, King's Haven Ministries, the purpose to to pre well, I can't even talk to begin a house for males, but we also have in mind another female house for women with children. The one we have
Fantastic.
now does not take children, but that would be another dream that we have as a part of this thrust toward expanding our ministry opportunities in Salisbury, North Carolina, which is where I live, just a little
Mhm.
town.
Yeah, our rescue mission has a women's shelter called City Light, and it has children also.
Uh-huh.
And that's really been a blessing because so often the women do have children,
Right,
and then they're able to go to school and get backpacks and school supplies and all
right,
those things and feel like they're kind of like a normal kid.
right,
Uh, and not just little kids. We're talking like teenagers 6 feet tall with size 13 shoe,
right,
type of thing
right,
that want to feel like they're a normal kid and that they
right.
don't live in a rescue mission. So it's been like my daughter was a grant writer for the rescue mission, and it's just been a really great thing. And back to the thing about having a house for men, uh, we have a family member who's had addiction issues, who's been,
Uh-huh.
goes back and forth, like, and then if you have a problem, then you're out of that house. Then you have to find another one, and you have to get
Mhm.
funding to be able to get into another one, some sort of financial, So for years, you can try to figure out how to get into different houses. And all I can say is there's such a huge need for that.
Right,
And so I just really just kudos to you. Really appreciate you taking that step to do
right.
that because the need is huge. It's so
Well,
big. And
it is huge. And the difference, Capstone Recovery Center is faith based. And what the ladies do mostly for the first 6 months they're there, I tell them they graduate with a mini seminary education. They are immersed in the word, they are taken to church and
Mhm,
other Christ based activities. They go to Celebrate Recovery. And
mhm,
that would be the vision for the men's house.
mhm,
I'm a firm believer that the way you get healed for eternity from these things is through Jesus Christ. Now, you might be able to bite fingernails and get sober, but the real success stories are those folks, like in that book that I was just sharing with you, who found Jesus and he healed them. It wasn't anything they did. And so that's what we do at Capstone, and that's what we'd like to provide for the men in our community.
yeah, that's great. And then how do you get assistance with that? Like financial, how do you financially support this for meals and for
All right.
house parents or whatever to run
Well,
it?
Capstone began on a totally volunteer basis. I will tell you that the executive director there spent several years and she just volunteered her time. But we began to write grants. We began to take
Yeah.
donations. we have a big fundraiser in the fall, I mean in the spring, where we invite people, and it is just grown and grown and grown. So it was meager and lean in the early years, but through God's grace, He began to send some people who helped us. We get a nice grant now from United Way, and but we have written grants. We really have not taken many federal dollars because we don't want to be tied to the federal system.
What they tell you have to teach. Yeah,
What you
yeah,
got to do and what you got
yeah.
to teach. That's not what we want to do. So we basically, that's not a great big ministry, but it has certainly met the needs of several women at a
Right.
time.
Yeah. So, how many people would be in each of these houses if you do the men's one or the women and children's?
Well, the women's house right now could accommodate only 7 or 8 people at a time. It's not big. I would envision placing this. I didn't mention I'm also the director of a facility called Hope House. That takes women who come out of not Celebrate Recovery, who come out of places like Capstone. They have to have finished a recovery program, and they come and they live there, and they get a job, and they pay a little rent money, and they begin to have to buy their own stuff.
Mhm,
So Capstone's free. Hope House
mhm,
is a next step, and it's not free, but it gives people who have finished a recovery program an opportunity to get their feet on the ground,
mhm.
reestablish family relationships, and so forth.
Well,
Um,
that gives them respect when they
yeah,
get a job, and they're,
right.
self-respect, and
But there
you
again, it's
know,
in a house, and it
yeah.
depends on how many rooms in the house. Each woman, we feel like when they come there, they are paying a little bit to be there. We provide them a room. They
Mhm,
have most of them get on food stamps, and they have to buy their own food and so forth.
mhm, mhm,
So I say, well, it depends. These houses would not be big; they would be
mhm,
rather small. They're most like families. We want the
mhm,
people come there who would feel
mhm.
like they're in a family. Now, if we get a house big enough for 10 people, we'd take 10 people. 10 people would probably be a lot because
So
we
these
want them
houses, do you
individually.
rent? Do you rent the
Or,
houses? Do you rent the houses, or you
well,
buy a house?
when we first started with Capstone, it was owned by the Catholic Church in our town, and was a part of a large parcel that included a convent and some other things. They wanted to sell it for several $1,000,000. Well, we didn't have several $1,000,000. But when our new executive director showed up from Florida out of the blue, one of those God things, she was able to talk to the priests and the people who owned it, and they let us rent it for a period of time. And then over time, they allowed us to buy it from them. By that time, we had enough money that we're still making payments on the mortgage, but not much. God did an amazing thing with that. We might have to do that with our men's house with Kings Haven. It may very well be a rental property. Love to buy property, but it might be a little rental property. Hope House is a different matter. It's owned by a preacher whose father owned the house. And when his father died, he inherited it and he wanted to use it for ministry. So he rents it to us at about half what he could get on the open market because he wants it to be used for ministry. And,
Yeah,
just God just does such amazing things.
yeah, big things, big thing, bigger than we imagine that he's going to do. Yeah, absolutely. So, what besides opening these new houses, are you thinking you might write another book, or what is your, tentative little plan for the next couple years?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I had a God moment this morning, Nikki. You won't believe this God moment. I had a phone conversation with a woman named Alicia Rouse. She is the one of 3 North Carolina state coordinators for Celebrate Recovery. And I have been trying to figure out how to get the book into Celebrate Recoveries in this state. And in the course of our conversation, she had come to our church in February and given her testimony, and I had given her a copy of the book. So I called her this morning just to see if she had read the book and what she thought of it. She loved the book. She gave it accolades. And when I told her I was trying to figure out how to get the book into churches that had Celebrate Recovery, she said if I would send her a case, she would sell them when she gives her testimony. Only,
Don't we all want to hear
only,
that? Yeah,
only
that's
God,
wonderful. Yeah,
only God could do that. She's going to
yeah.
5 churches in September. So I'm getting ready to send her 2 cases of books.
Wow,
I know
wow.
God
That's a
is,
dream. Yeah, that's
isn't
great.
that a dream that she's going to sell the books herself? And by that, she also not openly, but she's endorsed it. And she said, I'll be in your next book. So I'm going to have her story, and that's going to be my first story. And was I going to write another book? As of this morning, I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't
Yes,
that
that's
amazing?
great. That's
Uh,
wonderful. There's so many testimonies, endless testimonies
there are
of
endless
people.
tests.
I use testimonies a lot in my books. All my books have testimonies in them, and
Right,
um, they're really encouraging to our hearts because each person might connect with a different person, kind of, when they read it. So,
right.
so they and that like encourages them because they really kind of connect with that person's story, and so yeah, that's wonderful how God can use our testimonies to minister to others. And yeah, that's great. And so um, my husband always really likes you to tell about ways people can contact you. So give your website, give what other, if there's another way to contact you or get your books or and where they're found and how they can get in touch with each of these ministries if you have information on each one. So why don't you go ahead and kind of go through that for us, and then he'll print some of that along the podcast also.
Okay. Uh, well, obviously, the book that I'm talking about, True Stories of People in Recovery, is available where books are sold, online and otherwise. I'm trying to get it on my website so you can order it from me. I've got a little work to do to make that possible, but that's my next goal. My website is www.shirleyluckadoo.com. Pretty simple. It's my name. And so you can find that there. The books can be found in varying places online and hopefully soon directly from me. The advantage of selling it directly from me would be that I would have more money to put into this ministry than if somebody else sells it. I mean, that's just the reality of it. You can get in touch with Capstone by going to capstonerecoverycenter.com. And I'm not the director there, I'm the board chair there, but a lady named Miriam Ramirez is the director. And Hope House, the smaller ministry, I am the person that you would contact there about Hope House. So you could do that directly to me. Um, my phone number, I can give you my phone number, 704-232-1450. And so
So
that either of those ways.
are there more capstones?
No, there's
I mean,
just
like,
one.
are you expanding that? No, no.
There is
You're not
just
going to
one.
move into a different state or something with anything.
Well, no, I mean, to be honest, Miriam is like me. She's getting a little older. I would love to see it expanded where it is to be able to take in more people. And that
Oh,
there's where that, let's have some kids that can come. That's not happening yet. Who knows? In the future, it may very well happen. Um, but same thing with Hope House. We're small. Love to share how we do it with anybody that would like to for us to tell you. We started Capstone 10 years ago, and it was a process. Biggest thing you got to have is somebody's got the heart to do it. You got to have a heart for
exactly.
doing it. If you don't have a heart for doing it, Celebrate Recovery too. If you don't have a heart for doing it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
God's got to have called you just as clearly as he calls a pastor to do that ministry.
Right. Right. And so if I were to tell the listeners, if they have a passion for this, and
Right.
especially someone who's maybe has had someone in addiction, they see how valuable this is. You could, if you've thought about starting Celebrate Recovery in your church, or do a house yourself, or you have a house that could be used for that,
Right.
you could get a hold of Shirley and she could help
I, I've helped
figure
quite
out
a few people that
how to do
started
it.
their ministries in their churches. I'd love to do that. I'll come see you or
Yeah.
whatever, or we'll do what we're doing now. We'll Zoom. Somehow we would get together, and I'd love to do that. Would
Yeah,
love to
that
do.
was like a great idea. So if you're out there and you're thinking you'd like to help someone with these issues, because there's such a big need, a huge need,
Right.
then you could contact Shirley, and maybe she could give you a couple of pointers of what you could do in your state or your area. I mean, I'm in Idaho, so I'm clear across the US from you, but there's needs. And I've seen Celebrate Recovery that's taught at a few churches, and in Washington, where I grew up, I know people who are involved with it. So there's ways to get involved if you want to be involved in this. And we really should. And um, pray for God. If you feel burdened for this, God will answer your prayer, and
Right.
he'll he'll allow you to be able to find a way to minister to these people. So don't
Yeah.
let your self-doubt stop you from
Right.
doing something. But talk to Shirley and get her book, because her book sounds fabulous, and I have not had a chance to look at it yet, but I'm going to do that. So uh, thank you so much for tuning in today. We are with Shirley Luckadoo, and thank you, Shirley, for
Oh,
being
I've just
on our
enjoyed it.
program today. And
Yes.
thank you for tuning in to Live Boldly Ministries podcast, and we hope to see you next time. You pray for me, and I'll pray for you, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
God bless you too.